This video isn't for kids or quick facts. It's for grown viewers who want the truth. Rome engineered suffering with rules, schedules, and crowds. Stay with me, because every device here actually existed, and each one changed history forever after. Let's start with number 10. So, you think ancient Rome was cool? Wait until you hear about their crosses. Crucifixion didn't kill in minutes. It could take anywhere from 6 hours to 4 days for someone to finally stop breathing. Yeah, the cross was about pain, but it was also about making you suffer in front of the whole city. People think of it as nails and wood, but the torture started long before that. Most people tied to a cross were already bleeding badly from brutal whippings. The real trick? The way your arms got stretched out. The body position made it almost impossible to breathe. Victims had to push up on wounded feet just to catch a breath, and every time they did, it hurt more. When you got too tired to push, you basically choked while hanging there. Roman officials didn't hide this. They set up crosses by roads and gates where everybody could watch, hear, and smell what was happening. Cicero, a famous Roman, called it the most disgusting punishment, and said even saying the word cross was too much for a Roman citizen. If the victim took too long, soldiers sometimes broke their legs with a club so they'd suffocate faster. You want to know what else? Families often couldn't even bury their loved ones. Bodies were left out for birds and dogs to eat. For Romans, this wasn't just punishment, it was a public message. Obey, or this could be you. Ready for what they did before the cross? It's even worse. Here comes number 9. Imagine getting whipped so hard you can't stand. Romans called that discipline. Let's talk about the flagrum, Rome's idea of a good old-fashioned whipping. This wasn't a simple belt or stick. The flagrum was a crazy tool made of leather straps with sharp bones or heavy metal balls tied at the end. Why? To rip your skin and bruise your muscles all at once. How bad did it get? Researchers counted over 50 separate wounds on just one person after a real Roman-style beating. You weren't just getting hit. The whip could cut through skin, slice into muscles, and sometimes even chip bone. Imagine being tied to a post, getting hit over and over, while no one keeps count. Roman law didn't set a limit for how many times they could hit you. If you weren't a Roman citizen, the guards could keep swinging until they were bored. Jewish law stopped at 39 lashes. Romans had no such rule. Victims didn't pass out right away either. Early Christian writers talked about seeing people so shredded you could see veins and sometimes even organs. The worst part? All this happened before the main event. Once they were done, you were bleeding, shaking, and still had to drag yourself out for whatever came next. Now, if you thought getting whipped was bad, wait until you hear about what the Romans did with fire and a shirt. This next one is pure nightmare fuel. Let's move to number 8. Ever heard of a shirt that sets you on fire? Romans invented it. Here's something completely wild. The tunica molesta. This wasn't a cozy sweater. It was a long shirt soaked in stuff like pitch or oil, then locked around your neck with an iron collar so you couldn't take it off. Want to guess what happened next? Guards lit the bottom on fire, and flames shot up your body. Scientists now know that skin can be burned through in less than a minute at these temps. The fire didn't just burn your skin. The shirt trapped heat, so you cooked alive. Upright, arms locked, face on display for everyone to watch. People could scream, but the collar and ropes kept them standing until their bodies couldn't take it anymore. Roman Emperor Nero made this sick punishment famous after the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD. He used it to kill Christians, setting them up as nightlights for his garden parties. Yes, guests walked among burning bodies, and some even clapped. This didn't just happen once. Public burnings became a regular afternoon show in Roman arenas. Afterward, workers would drag away the blackened bodies with hooks so the next show could start. If you're thinking, that's the worst thing I've heard, hang on. Romans still had more animal tricks up their sleeves. If you're actually into this story, show some love. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and help us get these wild facts out there. The next part's about to get even crazier. Stick around, you really don't want to miss it. Next one is number 7. Getting thrown in a sack with wild animals. Yep, that was real. You're about to hear one of the weirdest punishments ever. Pena culiae. If someone murdered a parent, Romans didn't just kill them. They stuffed the person in a leather sack with a dog, a monkey, a snake, and a rooster, all alive. Picture it. Maybe 1.5 cubic meters of space, barely enough to stand up, and almost no light or air. The animals were scared and angry, so they bit and scratched at whatever they could reach, including the human inside. Sometimes the victim was whipped first, just to make things worse. This bizarre punishment started as far back as 100 BC. It lasted hundreds of years. Emperors kept bringing it back whenever they wanted to make an example out of someone who'd killed a family. Why all the animals? The Romans wanted to make the victim feel trapped, scared, and totally alone, literally fighting for life before drowning. Once the sack was sewn up tight, it was thrown in a river. The struggle ended fast, but what happened inside was so terrifying, people talked about it for generations. Still think public burning was the worst? Wait until you hear how Romans turned animal attacks into big business. Let's move to number 6. Death by wild animal. The Romans made it a sport. Imagine a sports stadium packed with 80,000 people. Now imagine everyone cheering while someone is torn apart by a lion. That's damnatio ad bestias, condemnation to beasts, and it was a real Roman event. This wasn't just for the worst criminals. Rebels, prisoners of war, even unlucky civilians could find themselves in the middle of the Colosseum, dressed in costumes and told to play along as a hero or villain from myth. Trainers starved lions, leopards, or bears to make sure they were ready to attack. Archaeologists still find human bones with lion tooth marks from Roman Britain and Italy. Victims got mauled, dragged, and sometimes survived long enough to be torn apart piece by piece. The Colosseum alone saw an estimated 400,000 human deaths and 9,000 animal deaths at its opening games in 80 AD. After each act, workers raked away the blood and dragged out bodies so the next show could start on time. For Romans, this was both entertainment and a warning. Nobody left thinking they could break the law and get away with it. No matter how rough your day gets, you don't have to worry about fighting a starving lion for a crowd's amusement. But next, imagine carrying a giant wooden beam through a screaming crowd with your back ripped open. Here comes number 5. Carrying a giant wooden beam while everyone booed, the Roman walk of shame. You've seen pictures of Jesus carrying a cross. Here's what most people don't realize. The piece he carried, the patibulum, weighed between 34 and 57 kilograms, as heavy as some adults. Now imagine dragging that across the city after a brutal whipping. The upright post waited outside the city. Prisoners just carried the crossbeam through crowded streets, bleeding, wobbling, barely standing. In Jerusalem, that walk was 600 to 900 meters, a distance that feels endless when you're in agony and people are jeering at you. Sometimes, Roman guards made the condemned wear a sign showing their crime. If someone collapsed, bystanders could be forced to help lift the beam. The whole thing wasn't just punishment for one person. It was a warning for everyone watching. Plutarch said it best. Every criminal carries his own cross. People didn't forget. Blood ran down the street, and the victim usually arrived at the execution site half dead. But this was just the setup. Once the condemned reached the hill, there was nowhere left to run. And even after death, Rome had more tricks, some that made families wish for a quick end. Let's move to number 4. Leaving bodies to rot in public, Rome's final insult. Romans didn't just kill people. They left bodies hanging outside the city, sometimes for days or even weeks. Officials made sure everyone saw what happened if you crossed the empire. Crucified or exposed, the dead weren't given funerals. In Roman culture, dead bodies were considered dangerous pollution. But the point was for everyone to see, smell, and remember the lesson. Birds and dogs would tear at flesh, while bugs and the sun did the rest. Families begged for the right to bury their loved ones, but most times they heard no. Undertakers used hooks to drag away what was left. The ground was littered with bones and scraps of clothing. Travelers passed these scenes daily, and kids grew up seeing them on their way to school or the market. You didn't need a law book. One look told you everything you needed to know about Roman justice. This was about punishing families too. No proper burial meant lasting shame. Even after the body finally dropped, the message stuck in everyone's mind. Cross the law, and your story ends in public decay. Some Romans found even crueler ways to end a life, sometimes quick, sometimes hidden. Next one is number 3. Quick, quiet, and deadly. The rope trick that made people disappear. Want to know how Romans made people vanish fast? The lacuus was a simple rope. Tighten it around the neck, pull hard, and you're gone in as little as 10 seconds. The worst enemies of Rome didn't get an arena. They got the Tullianum, a secret pit of a prison. No crowd, no drama, just a guard and a rope. The victim stood on a platform, and with one move, the floor dropped out and the rope snapped tight. Medical studies today say if both big arteries are squeezed, you pass out almost instantly. Then your brain dies from lack of oxygen. There were signs: bruised necks, swollen faces, eyes sometimes bleeding. Sometimes the rope worked so fast there wasn't even time for the victim to shout. The body was left on the cold floor, far from the public eye. The message was clear: Rome could make you disappear without a trace. Why use the rope instead of a sword? It was cheap, needed no cleanup, and kept troublemakers out of sight. People didn't talk about it much, but everyone knew. If you heard about the lacuus, you kept your head down. The next Roman sentence made sure you'd never be seen again by putting you deep in the earth. Let's move to number 2. Rome didn't just lock you up, they worked you to death in the mines. Let's talk about the punishment almost nobody escaped. Damnatio ad metalla. It sounds like exile, but really it was a slow, grinding death sentence. Writers said places like Carthago Nova in Spain held up to 40,000 slaves in its mines. Rebels, criminals, even early Christians got sent underground with a hammer and no hope of ever coming out. The tunnels were so small you had to crawl. Breathing was hard, and you never saw sunlight. Lamps burned for 11 hours straight, and when they went out, you kept digging or you died under a cave-in. If you got hurt, too bad. Someone else would take your spot. Dust and poisonous fumes wrecked your lungs. Bones have been found mixed in with waste rock. If you died, they dumped your body with the trash. Historians now call this a slow-motion death penalty. It wasn't public, but everyone knew what it meant. No rescue, no second chance. People above ground kept their heads down, terrified of ending up below. And if you think all of this is too much, remember, Romans built these punishments right into their entertainment calendar. And the last is number 1. Want to know why ancient Romans didn't rebel? Look at their calendar. The Roman Empire scheduled up to 175 days a year for games and executions. That means almost every other day someone was getting killed in public. Executions weren't random. They were the main act, right between beast fights and chariot races. The more people saw these punishments, the less anyone cared. Historians say crowds became unofficial enforcers for Rome. Cheering, laughing, or just looking away, the crowd made sure everyone got the message: don't challenge the empire. One ancient writer joked that Romans wanted only bread and circuses. It worked. People got free food, a wild show, and a constant reminder to keep in line. Even Seneca, who advised emperors, called these events pure murder. Did anyone listen? Not really. The games just kept getting bigger. Kids grew up thinking all this was normal. Seeing people get whipped, burned, or fed to lions made the laws feel real, more than any rulebook ever could. Over time, everyone stopped asking questions. Rome wanted obedience, and with a schedule like that, they got it. So next time you hear someone say, "Ancient Rome was awesome," you know the truth. Behind the cool statues and roads, there was a world of pain, and every Roman felt it, every single day. If any of these surprised you, you haven't seen anything yet. Hit play for